All right. Well, you probably don't need to do a formal intro.
I
But go
do
ahead.
want to do a little intro for our audience who
Okay.
watch videos later. So good evening, and it is my pleasure to introduce John Golden, the CEO of Crux Collaborative, one of the user experience and user research agencies in the Twin Cities area. I should just say a few words about our history. I used to take students to Crux Collaborative, and initially it was actually Eden Golden, wasn't it?
It was, yes.
For a number of years, and it was a beautiful workspace. It was inspirational. It was exciting, and we're just equally excited to hear from John today to talk about how the pandemic of COVID-19 has changed the user research.
Yes. Yeah, it definitely has had an impact on our business across the board. Um, why don't I share my presentation and we can kind of go through that. And then I've got a presentation to show that kind of goes through some of the highlights of some of the things that we've sort of gleaned from the pandemic and doing a number of different kinds of research, typically specifically 3 different methodologies that we had used, co-creation and prioritization, feature prioritization. Then we also have been exploring, straight on usability testing, and then doing some, interviews and understanding a little bit more about what stakeholders want in applications and things like that. And it has been a fascinating process to not be with people in person. And I think that has been the biggest change in our business, especially since we were such advocates for in-person all the time because we wanted to see their body language and they get all these sorts of things. But sometimes you're forced to think out of the box a little bit. And I think that in this case, it has benefited us in a number of ways. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. So let me share my presentation here. Let's see if I can get this thing going. Oh, you know what I should do first is share my screen because it takes over my whole screen. That's one of the things about Zoom or using any of these things that is really can be a challenge, is having all of the technical things that surface that that you don't really are not really aware of. Okay, so let's see if we got this here. All right, are you seeing that? Sort of the non-presenter view?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'll put it into presentation mode. So I'm just going to go through it at a pretty high level in the beginning, and we'll focus mostly on our process and what we did and where some of the things that changed happened and that sort of thing. So just high level, Crux Collaborative, we are a user experience consulting firm. I like to say we specialize in things that are very transactional in nature. Usually they're things that are behind the login. People or our clients tend to hire us to solve a very complicated problem, or it's they want to prove a concept. That's a lot of the things that we've been doing lately is somebody's got a great idea for a digital product or something along those lines, and they want to hire us to validate whether or not that it's going to work for people and where there might be opportunities for improvement. And a number of the projects that we've been working on lately have been in that zone, and then also really looking to pinpoint different parts of a process to see where there's opportunities, where there's barriers, where things that might be missed, that sort of thing. We do get a lot of these. Another specialty that we have is what I call Frankenstein. We take apart Frankensteins. So Frankenstein is a site, and I define it as a site that, it's a whole bunch of little applications all bolted together, and no one really thought about how the user is going to interact with that. What they've thought about more is how it's going to be done from a development standpoint and what's the cheapest or most efficient way to develop the site versus what's the best way to develop the site with the user in mind so they're successful. And in the end, if they're successful, the site's going to be successful, or the application. So Crux Collaborative, we do a lot of transactional behind the login user experiences. We only do UX. We don't do branding work. We don't have a software application. We don't do any of those sorts of things. We're very much a consulting firm, and very specialized in what we do. We tend to work with a lot of big companies, as in our past. We still do a lot of work with very large organizations like United Healthcare or Optum or US Bank, these types of organizations. But lately, the business has been shifting quite a bit, and we've taken a lot more projects from small to medium-sized companies that don't have an internal UX team. So that's kind of been the niche that we've carved a little bit. So I would say, a business that's maybe 100 to 500 employees, that has a strong website or a strong application that they're working on, but they don't want to staff a UX team. So typically, those have been our new clients. And then also, like I was talking about earlier, we've been doing a lot of work in the venture capital space, where somebody's got an idea, they have a bunch of money that they've been awarded to try to see if that idea has some legs, and they come to us to help them concept it, really figure out who they're talking to, and then validate to see whether or not it's gonna work. Looks like we've got somebody popping in here. Okay, so these are the four things that if I had to break down, if I had to do my own information architecture on our business, these are the four things that we specialize, the four categories. So UX strategy and planning, that's really to understand features, prioritization, who the user is, matching business objectives with user objectives, just trying to understand what there is. Usually there's interviews and things that happen in that time where we would talk to people, and learn a little bit more about what they want, both on the client side and then on the user side as well. User experience design, we still do a lot of wireframing, though it's a lot different than it was when we first started the business. Tends to be very small. Now we've been doing wireframes that are more interactive, so we kind of almost get into that prototype. We try to get into a prototype of something as quickly as possible, because that helps us to really understand what's going to work, how it's going to be in a mobile view, all of those sorts of variables that surface. Usability evaluations and user research, that's really the core foundation of our business. That's what we started on. And like I said, we do a number of different styles of usability testing, concept usability testing. We go for task analysis to try to understand where there's a problem or a barrier. We do a lot of interviews with people. We do contextual inquiry. When we were able to do that, where we'd go on site places and watch people use different things or devices, when we were doing a UI for a device that was specific, or something handheld that's not a phone, that type of thing. And then refinement and implementation consulting. And while that sounds really boring, that is one of the things, one of the areas I think in our business that is the most critical, because what happens a lot of the times is you hand off a whole bunch of deliverables and wireframes and design and everything to the development team, and they take it and they go away with it and they never call you back again. And then what happens is then they interpret those things, and oftentimes then there's a number of challenges that can be built into an application. So what we try to do is, instead, as part of our scope of work, is to work with the implementation team and development teams as they are implementing. So when questions come up, fringe use cases surface that may not have been in the documentation, we are able to help them solve those problems in a way that meets the objectives for the user and the business at the same time. So today, what we're going to talk about is this part of our process. So I'm not going to spend any time talking about the other three, though we do some research, as I mentioned, in the planning stages typically. But really, what we're going to be focusing on today is some of the research that we've conducted with two specific clients I'm going to show you later on. We've been doing a lot of work for the University of Minnesota Masonic Children's Hospital. And we've also been doing quite a bit of work for a local company here in Minneapolis called Landscape Structures, and they build playground equipment, large scale playground equipment, really incredible playgrounds is what they do. And we helped them with the project that I'll talk about in a little bit. I was going to give a little bit of background on me and where my career started. I won't spend a whole lot of time talking about myself, but video games actually started my career. I was a professional gamer for 2 years, and I was hired basically to break the games in beta format and then write walkthroughs at how to get there before all that information was available as readily as it is on the internet. So we produced CD-ROMs and things along those lines that would actually be companions with the game. It was a fantastic job for me when I was 23, 24 years old, because I basically spent 40 hours a week playing video games nonstop. I went to MCAD. I have a degree in graphic design and visual communications. I have a typo there, but that's what it's supposed to say, is visual communications. I worked for a while at a company called John Ryan Company. They are a financial services company that does financial services experience design. So they do the branch, they did all the interactive things that would happen in there. And my job was to do kiosk design when I was there. And then I was also a design director at Larson Design for a long time. Larson no longer exists, but it was a long-standing design firm in Minneapolis for 25, 30 years. After that, I left my job and joined up with my wife, whose name is Emily Eaton, and we started a company called Eaton Golden. And Eaton Golden was basically just like Crux Collaborative. It was a user experience firm. And several years after we started the business, Emily decided she wanted to take a different direction, and she left Eaton Golden. And since there was no Eaton, just a Golden left, we changed the name to Crux Collaborative. Fast forward to now, so Crux Collaborative, we've had for, I think it's going on 7 years now. Now we're a very small company. At the biggest, we were about 15 employees. We had a facility in Edina with a full research lab. I'll show you a picture of that in just a moment. We had a full research lab. We had several UX practitioners on staff, two developers, a designer, and then project management staff as well, and then myself and another principal as well. So we were a pretty good size company as Crux Collaborative. And then as the industry changed a little bit, we've kind of skinnied up a little bit. And then when COVID hit, we all went virtual. And now here we are. So what I wanted to spend the most time talking about is how we approach research. So our research methodology, and what I want to talk a little bit about is where things changed. So if we break it down into these steps, we have a recruiting and scheduling step. So when we meet with our client, we establish research objectives and understand, basically who the people are that we want to talk to. And what we would do then is write a screener based on demographics and things, and then recruit those people into seats. We would then create a test plan based on the research objectives, and we always form research objectives in the form of questions that we want answered as a result of the research. And I'm going to show you an example of what a test plan looks like in a little bit. And then we would do facilitation. So, typically for a usability study, we would do 45 to 60-minute interviews one-on-one with people. And then we would we record all those videos, we record everything to video, and then we look for trends, observations, and things in the research. We look for what themes emerge as a result of this research. Typically how we facilitate research is a little bit different than how most people do it. Our research tends to be very conversational. I feel it's really important to get the participant very comfortable with the process. And that's one of the big things that surfaced out of doing research virtually, is that they're a whole lot more comfortable talking to you when they're in the comfort of their own home, than when they are in a research facility and they come in and they have to answer a bunch of questions and fill out some forms and all of those sorts of things. And then the last part is distilling all of that stuff down into a report, which provides observations and recommendations. And I'll show you an example of what that looks like as well, just so you have some context. So when we think about traditional research, so this is a picture of our former research lab. And one of the things that was really important to us with our usability lab was that it was a great experience for our clients to be in. Our clients would come to our office and they would need to spend sometimes 2 or 3 days in this space. It would be all day long that they would be in this space. And what we wanted to do is to make sure that it was a good experience for them. So we needed to we wanted to have natural light coming into the space. We wanted to have comfortable chairs. There's all kinds of technology that was built into the room it was really easy for them to just kind of plug in and do what they needed to do. And of course, we had lots of food and all this sort of stuff would come in. So the research experience itself, we wanted to have it be, a very sort of plush experience, and then the participants would come in. It would be really hard in today's pandemic world to have a situation like this, because you'd have a whole bunch of people all packed into a small space together. So impossible to do. So what we were unable to do was to use a facility like this, which we didn't have access to anyway. But we also had a research partner who has a facility. Locally, they're called Ascendancy Research. And we partner with them to do usability testing, and we use their facility. But we were unable to do that. So it was a big barrier because, we wanted the people to be in person. It was really important to me at one point that I had everybody there talking to us in person, so I could really get a sense for their body language, how they were moving when I would say something, how they would react to these things, whether they'd kind of fall back in their chair a little bit, or, whether they would stumble a little bit with the mouse, those types of things were important sort of cues to get to really see, are they telling me what they're really saying, or, because it would help me kind of dig into that stuff a little bit. We also used a proprietary software, which is now completely, in my opinion, obsolete with Zoom. Zoom does a much better job than the software that we used to use called Moray. Moray was a software that composited the user's desktop and their picture-in-picture. And what it would do is it would also track mouse movements and things like that, so we could understand what they clicked on and what they hovered on and that sort of thing. It was also very cumbersome because it would take a long time for it to process video, these sorts of things. But it was really great because we could hook up mobile devices to it. We could hook up anything to capture, and we could pretty much capture anything that we wanted. But it also had to be on the machine that we were using. So even when we would do an online test or a virtual test where somebody would come in, we would use WebEx or something along those lines. They would come in, we'd pass control over to them, and we would use Moray to record all the screen movements. So we couldn't use Moray because we couldn't have the software on the machine, so we had to come up with a different solution. And as we started to explore different ones, and Zoom became so popular in the pandemic, it was just kind of a no-brainer situation. And one of the things recently I discovered that is so incredible is the fact that you can do mobile on it too. So if somebody logs in with a mobile device, they share their screen, and you're seeing their screen. So for application, for testing apps and things along those lines, it's pretty awesome. It does have some downsides in that, and I'll talk about that a little bit. The other thing that we used to do a lot is collaborate with our clients in person. So now all those chairs that you see there on screen, those used to have clients sitting in them lots of the time. So sometimes we'd have up to 12 clients would come in, they come in and after, so part of my process in facilitating would be what I would do is I would say, okay, now that we're done with the test plan, so that I'm talking to the participant, what I'm going to do is just let you sit here for a minute or two. Feel free to explore the site or application on your own. And I'm going to go in the back and see if anybody back there has any specific questions for you. And lots of times what I would do is, the first thing I would do is I'd go back into the room, and then we would stop and we would watch them, because we would learn basically sometimes as much during that 5 minutes with them just exploring the site on their own without remembering they're being watched and opening things and, you know, kind of moving around in there, as we would during the usability test. So we would sit there and watch them for a little bit and just kind of observe what they were doing. And then I would come back to them with questions. And lots of times, you know, then the clients could ask, you know, specific questions. We could have sort of collaboration. And then after the sessions were over, what we would do is just have a quick kind of debrief. We had this whole sort of note-taking system that we used inside of the observation room with our clients, so we could really track client quotes and things that they said about whatever it was that we were testing, and then also thinking about, you know, what are they doing, and from our clients' perspective, it was really helpful because they were the experts in their business and we're the experts in UX, so we wanted to understand how is our client interpreting what these people are saying to us, and how are we also then interpreting the usability feedback and input that we're receiving from them. And then collaboration with end users. So one of the things that now outside of usability testing that we did a lot was co-creation sessions, where we'd bring a group of people in, almost like in a focus group style environment. We would teach them a very simple sketching methodology, so to actually draw the interface. We would present to them a very simple problem. Okay, so if you log into your bank account, what is the first things that you'd want to see on that screen, and what would that screen look like to you? And then we would spend you know, some time with them sketching that, you know, doing these sort of real crude drawings. Then we talk about the drawings, and it was really fascinating because we get a lot of information about what the end user actually wanted, and it works really well with our clients as well. So those were things that we did a lot with end users that were all in person that we couldn't do anymore. And that had a big impact on our business. If we couldn't do usability testing, we couldn't do research, we couldn't do co-creation, it's kind of hard to gather feedback. So we had to kind of pivot and figure out a little bit more about what we wanted to do. So when we think about our process and what changed, to me, these are the two areas in our process that changed the most. So the scheduling and recruiting section and the actual facilitation. Our report looks very similar, you know, in terms of what we would deliver and how that would work and the observation kind of thing. And developing the test plan is also a very similar thing, just in terms of the questions that we want to ask, the questions that we want answered, our clients' objectives, all of those types of things that, you know, are very similar. Where it differs greatly is in the recruiting and scheduling. And that why I say that, because how we recruited people was a lot different. So in a lot of cases, what we've been doing is doing a little bit less formal recruiting, where we would have our client provide us with a list of people and that sort of thing. And we were able to schedule that way, because it was harder for us to get into and work with the recruiting company, and our clients' budgets got a lot smaller, and they had access to a number of people. Typically, we'll do that when it's something very specialized. And the two sites that are the two projects that I'm going to show you were very specialized with a very specialized audience, so it worked really well. We have one coming up now that we are going to go recruit nationally for. So we are hire the recruiting company based on the screening documents that we do, and we do that. Now, the other thing that really changed as part of that is the scheduling. Now, how we used to do it is we would schedule all the sessions back to back over 1 or 2 days. So I had it in me to do 8 or 9 sessions all in a day. And then we do that, you know, maybe 2, sometimes 3 days, depending upon how many audiences and whatever. The average test is between 8 and 16 respondents. Now, what we do is we schedule them over 3 or 4 days, and we open it up to a much wider time frame, because we don't have a facility to pay for. I can much easier say to somebody, hey, you know, I can chat with you at 7 o'clock tonight, or I can chat with you at 7:30 in the morning, versus I have a schedule. The first session starts at 9 o'clock. The last session starts at 4:15, and then try to get people into those spots. So it provided tremendous flexibility for us, because we could then basically, like with an 8-person study over 3 days, we'd had some come in and some come out at different times, and I don't have to go anywhere. I don't have to drive to a facility. I don't have to spend a lot of time doing that. So it made a lot more efficient for us. And it also made it a lot more efficient for our clients, because they could come in and out of the sessions when they wanted to, rather than coming to the space. In terms of facilitation a lot different doing it this way, because we have Zoom to deal with. And there's a whole bunch of different things that surface with Zoom that you don't have in person. So some of the things that would happen in person is, when I have a respondent come in, sometimes, you could just tell they're not they're not as excited to be there, maybe, as they could be. And you can kind of get them, to, get into that groove and whatever. But you also don't have the technology barrier. So if somebody doesn't quite get it, or they're having a problem, or they continually don't unmute themselves, or they don't want to turn on their cameras, all of these sorts of things create some variables in the process. And we ran into a number of different sorts of challenges along the way, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But the way we facilitate is a little bit different, where we want to make sure that people are comfortable. I have to immediately try to get them very comfortable with us online, and really try to make sure that they understand that I'm not a fly-by-night operation. While I am a guy in my basement right now, this is what I do, and sometimes that sort of validation of that. We also had, especially at first, people that just decide not to show up to the Zoom meeting, because it's a Zoom meeting. It's a less formal invitation than coming to a research facility, receiving a gratuity, doing that whole sort of thing. So one of the things that we've changed a lot in our communication to participants when we're scheduling and confirming them, is really making sure that they're into it, that they're validating that they're going to be there, that they have all the things that they need in place, for the research, whatever that is. They've received whatever materials they have from us, and we double check to make sure that they're going to be there. Okay, so I talked a little bit about some of this stuff, and I pulled some screenshots of some things that we've done a little bit of here. The one in the back there, you can see, this is the landscape structure site. So this is a screenshot from the video that I'm going to show you in a little bit. I'm going to show you a little bit of a participant video, because there was something that happened in that participant video that had never happened before, and our client basically freaked out when it happened, and I'll share that with you in a minute. So thinking about what we learned, we learned we could provide a lot more flexibility. We could provide, like I said, more flexibility for our clients, more flexibility for the participants, and to be quite honest, more flexibility for me, because doing 8 or 9 back-to-back sessions is incredibly fatiguing after you're on session, 7, and then the next day, you're on, session 14. To be able to spread them out a little bit, it helped me be a little bit fresher. The other thing it helped too was the fact that we had some time between these sessions. So in some cases, we made changes to the prototype that we, based on some feedback that we had heard of, or the application that we were testing, just to validate, hey, there's 3 or 4 people talked about this already. Why don't we show them a version that's like that, and see if the next round of respondents, if it resonates with them. We were also able to then, have a little bit more time with the clients, and we were doing it, via chat, window and that sort of thing, to say, hey, so what did you think about that? Yeah, that'd be great. Maybe we should dig into this a little bit more. Maybe we should do this. Whereas it became a lot more collaborative, actually, for us to be doing it this way, where I think the clients get fatigued after sitting in there all day long and having that sort of experience all day long as well. They just kind of get to a point where you walk into the back room and they're just all on their phones. They're just all looking down. They're just all on their phones. And they're just like, yeah, it's good. Just, yeah, I don't have any questions. But they were both, I think the 4 studies that we've done so far, they had, or at least, in this past few months here, all the clients were way more engaged in the process. We were able to deliver results faster. We got through the testing more quickly because we were going at this pace by the person that works with me is able to start to format the report as we're going. So she's, instead of taking a notes document, we've got a process in place for how she can actually start to fill in pieces and parts of the report as she's starting to see trends. So we are actually building the report on the fly with observations and recommendations as we go, which is a little bit different technique than we've done in the past. The cost was about half the cost for what we used to charge for usability tests to do it this way, because we're able to really, we don't spend nearly as much time. We're more efficient throughout the process. So we've just been able to reduce the costs. And then our clients have been getting a lot more value in terms of that and doing more research. So that's been really great as well. And then we're a bit more targeted in the research, and then we also increased client participation. So we got more clients to come in and watch. And you see on this screen that you're seeing here, those 3 blank ones are clients. So we turn everything off, we hide them. People know that there's somebody on, but the idea is that we just don't want them to be distracted by having somebody there. Then we were also able to use some of the features within Zoom, and this is actually a co-creation prioritization session that we're going to run tomorrow. We're doing a project with the University of Minnesota around a mobile application to help cancer survivors basically transition from being a childhood cancer patient to an adult cancer patient and getting follow-up treatments to be able to take care of themselves versus their parents or a caregiver. So it's a big gap in that care space that we're trying to fill, and we're working with we're talking to patients and doing these prioritization sessions with patients. So we're actually using the Zoom polling feature we set up a whole number of polls in there for them to take to help us prioritize what's most important, and then we'll talk about that. I'm going to walk you through the deck that we're going to show the participants in just a little bit. Okay, so a few things to watch out for. So here's a good example. I can't show you this person's face because they're a patient. But this was a project that we did. We helped design this site for survivorship. So this is a different group within the University of Minnesota, but they wanted us to do a concept validation test. And here's an example of something not to do. That's why I pulled this. So here's so the previous screen when we had it. This is far less distracting for the participant. They see themselves and they see me, and they just know that there's some people here. In this version here, we've got our logo in there, and then our client had their picture, so she's on there. So it becomes a little bit more distracting to them. Some of the things that we ran into, I already talked a little bit about technical problems and recording issues. One thing that we always do is we have 2 of us on the Zoom call all the time. Both of us are recording, not just one person recording. Both of us are recording the sessions, because what happens sometimes is one of the machines stops recording for some reason, and then we lose all the session data. So if you ever do this live and you have the ability to record 2, I would highly recommend having 2 people record at the same time, because then that ensures you that you're not going to lose any information. Device preference. This was one thing that we made a big mistake on in some of the early things that we were doing. So we assumed that somebody coming on to Zoom would come on a laptop because that's how we do it. When that's user experience 101 sorts of things, is to ask people questions about what their preferences are. So at one point we had somebody come in there, then they were supposed to be doing this using a desktop application, but they came into Zoom on a mobile phone, and they couldn't access any of the resources. They couldn't access the prototype. It didn't make any sense. It was optimized for mobile. All of that sort of stuff just kind of went. So we lost the session. The other one that's a big one, and this surfaced with our landscape structures client, is clients not following the rules. And so we've made it very clear now to our clients when they come to do research with us that it's most effective if they follow the rules that we have. And one of the rules is not talking to the participants. And that was really hard for our client because the participants that came in were some of their biggest customers. And when their biggest customers start talking about problems and things with their organization or with the way that they're looking at products, the client has an immediate wants to apologize, wants to be, or worse yet, become a little bit defensive about that. Well, that's not the way that we intended it to be. So clients not following the rules is kind of a big one. Or another one is coming in to the middle of the session. So since it's a Zoom session, that's kind of common practice is, if you come in a little bit late or you just kind of drop off or whatever, it's kind of in and out. When we're doing research, we need to make sure that all of the clients who are going to participate in that research are there before 5 minutes before the actual meeting starts. And then we leave them in the waiting room if they come in late. That's something that we establish up front. We want to make sure that they do it that way, because otherwise it's disruptive, because they'll come in, they invariably won't be muted, or they'll have their camera on, and then it's distracting, and then we have to stop the session, apologize to the participant, and then move forward. And then the other thing that has surfaced, and it's really important, is for people to be on camera. And we've had a few people that have chosen not to be on camera. And I actually had one woman who, when I asked her if she'd mind turning her camera on, she got really angry with me. And it was none of my business to have her, have her camera on, and it was too private for her. And my whole thing was like, it's just so I can have a face-to-face conversation with you. There wasn't anything, we weren't trying to be intrusive, but that bothers some people. So that is something that when we're thinking about recruiting people for a usability test now, and we're using virtual setup, we want to make sure that they are comfortable being on camera. They have a working camera on their computer, and they're comfortable using it. They've used Zoom in the past. So these are actually going to be questions that we've added to our screener now to make sure that when we're going to do a virtual test, that we get the right people in the right spots to give us good feedback. Otherwise, it's just a little bit more challenging. You can't really tell what they're thinking. You can't really tell, you don't get that sort of body language. I can tell when they kind of lean into the screen, or they're engaged, where it's hard when you just see somebody's name. Okay, so thinking about what business problems this benefits from, and when I was talking about sketching earlier, this is a picture of our sketching process, or how we used to do it, and how I hope to do it someday in the future. But this doesn't work online. We actually tried to do this, and it just didn't work. We tried to do it when we were doing it in person. We tried at one point to bring in somebody virtually to do it. So they were, in another city, and their team was in our office. And so what we do is we have this very simple drawing methodology. You can see there's just a couple of colors of marker, and you draw these little thumbnail sketches of the application or whatever it is that interface we're looking at. And then we keep iterating almost like in an agile format with the participants to narrow down the ideas. And then that becomes the foundation for the UX documentation that we would produce, like wireframes and that sort of thing. So trying to send people markers, so they all have the same thing, trying to come up with, giving them, we're going to do it around a mobile application. So, we had set up these little panels and that sort of thing. And then it just occurred to both of us when we were, myself and the practitioner that I work with, it's like, this is not going to be a good experience. And we are going to spend probably 30 minutes of our session explaining to them how to do this. Because then we were thinking, well, we'll take them through like a little dry run, draw something real simple, how would you want to see your weather displayed on the phone or something? We kept trying to kind of like poke holes in, how can we use our process to get there? Well, the reality is that this just wasn't a good process to use, and it wouldn't provide a good experience for our participants, and we didn't feel like we were going to get enough value from it for our client. So what Zoom or virtual sessions I feel work best for is concept validation. So we did a number of A/B versions and things. So looking at different concepts, how does this work for you? How does that work for you? Something very visual that they can see and react to on screen. Task-based usability testing, of course, where you're trying to get somebody through a process or you're trying to have them complete a series of tasks. Feature prioritization, which I'll show you in a minute, and using the Zoom polls and whiteboards within Zoom to talk to people about, like, okay, so here's all the features that we have. So what we did is we conducted interviews, we grabbed features, we have all these features that they're going to look at, which ones are the most important to have in this interface, that sort of thing. Stakeholder and user interviews, that's kind of a no-brainer. You really don't have to do much of anything but talk to somebody. That's what Zoom is designed for. Not great for, now I talked about mobile testing as something being great, so it's kind of a double-edged sword a little bit. So one of the things that we don't get from doing Zoom is I don't see how their hands are operating over the top of the device. And that's a big thing to see. Are they kind of hesitating? Are they, how are they using that? Is it easy for them to be able to press, get to the functionality? Are they kind of stumbling around with it? That sort of thing. We had, when we do it traditionally, we had this device that would attach to the back of the phone, and it would have two really tiny little cameras, one that would point down on the device and one that would point up at the person's face. So it was really cool. They could use it, and then you could see their screen, their fingers, moving on the phone or the tablet, and then you could also, get their facial expressions and that sort of thing. With Zoom, it won't give you their live video. So you'll just get kind of their name, or if they have a photo there, you'll just see their photo. But what you do see in much better detail is the actual what's happening on their device itself, which in a lot of ways is kind of good enough for what we need to do. I think that's a lot different if we were doing device testing. So sometimes we've been hired to design, a screen for a humidification system, or some sort of medical device that has a screen built into it. And in that case, you really need to be in the environment, or you need to be, with the person. It would just be too hard to. You just can't share that. So we do some of that type of work as well. And you doing a virtual session just isn't going to work well. Sketching and co-creation, like I mentioned, and then contextual inquiry, where we go on site somewhere, watch people use something, or watch people in their environment to understand where there's problems or where there's opportunities. We had a big project fairly recently where it was a parking lot the company made software that operates a parking lot. So what we did is we went on site to various parking lots around Minneapolis and St. Paul, and we talked to parking lot managers. They walked us around the facility. They showed us where all the sensors and things are and cameras are within the parking lot, how the device is interconnected with the main systems and things along those lines. So understanding that kind of view and being in their environment is sometimes key to being able to solve a UX problem. And that is something that you cannot do doing this, regardless of whether they're walking around with you on FaceTime or whatever it is. It's just not the same. It's just not the same. Okay, so let me switch over here and show you some deliverables. So I have 2 projects to show. I talked about landscape structures and University of Minnesota Masonic Children's Hospital. Okay, so here's a Zoom technical sort of situation now, getting all of these things to work. Okay, so the first one I want to show you is, let's see here. Okay, so Quan, we did this without the speaker. I should turn my, I'm going to turn my headset off and so you can hear the audio.
Yes, I think that works.
Okay, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So one of the things, so I'm going to share this screen here. So this is a video of one of the interviews that we did for landscape structures. So this person, let me just kind of move it forward here so you can see him. So this guy here, he's a landscape architect. He works for a fairly prominent landscape architecture firm in Canada. And what we wanted to find out, what we're trying to figure out is, what were landscape architects missing from the landscape structures website? They were all complaining that they couldn't get to their CAD drawings and different product information and that sort of thing. So what was it that would help improve their experience and make them more successful in specifying landscape structures products for their project? So one of the things that happened was, as we were going through, we were talking to this guy, and he's showing us, we got this, we opened up the site. So this was their existing site, and he's kind of going through and talking to us.
If we're going for kind of more information gathering, we would, put some things together. Well, actually, let me share something really quickly if I can open that.
Okay. So this is something that would never happen in a traditional usability test. What he just said was, hold on a second, let me share something with you. So I said, okay, let's have him share it. So now what happens is, here's where we talk about technical problems.
Put things together. So if we're doing concept drawings, sometimes you did 2 or 3 different concepts for how the park might be laid out. But for the piece of equipment in there, if we decided, with this one, let's say nature play or whatever our concept might be, we would say, okay, well then here's a few ideas, and we're actually doing this in a job right now. Let me just find my presentations. It's not the right image.
Okay, so I'm not going to have you
for example, here.
But pick another one to show.
Well, let's see, where is it? I advanced it too far.
Share the entire screen, not just the.
So he's struggling with Zoom because he uses Microsoft Teams. So you can start to see him get sort of concerned. He's.
All right, vision boards. Here we go. So with this one, for example, we're looking at some play options, and so here are a few options for kind of more net play or more other options. And so we would show them this as a visioning image and say, hey, here's some options doing those things, rev your motor or get you going. Not necessarily, I want this exact piece of equipment, but I like the idea of that. And then we can use that to then narrow things down. And again, with more aquatic stuff, it's like they want a splash pad in this job. So here's some images that we pulled from websites and personal photos. And it's like, here's a couple options for different ways to do splash pads. Here's just some jets, here's some.
Anyway, you get the idea. We would have never seen this if we would have had him in person in a research facility. And later on, he shows us the plans he's drawing. He shows us all of the different variations of the plans, the fidelity of the sketches that he's doing, all of this sort of thing. And our client, after the session was over, they said, we have been doing this for decades, and no one has ever shown us that like that in person. So we were able to see, kind of peer into how this person actually engages with the company, what resources they look for specifically, how they use those resources, and they did it. They did it all off script as part of our plan. So then we started asking more questions about that with other participants, and we got them to show us more things. So this is something that just kind of surfaced out of doing this type of Zoom research that I thought was really pretty great. Let's see, I can show you kind of already looked at what a ULab looks like. Let me show you what one of our test plans looks like. Now, I won't take you through the whole thing in detail, but this was a test plan that we did for landscape structures. So this was after we conducted the initial research interviews to understand what people wanted. We redesigned their site, and then we built a prototype and did a number of A/B tests on different versions of things, the navigation, the way the products were displayed, these sorts of things, to understand what was the most effective way to present that information to people. So when we do a test plan, oftentimes we'll do it in a way that's like, so this talks a little bit about what we were going to do. These are the questions that we would ask or want answered as a result of the research. So sometimes they're pretty broad, like is the site intuitive and easy to use, and then it gets pretty specific about things like does the new structure allow designers to find and access necessary? I mean, that's very specific question that the client wanted answered. Our sessions are usually broken down like this. So we have a 5-minute intro. We do task analysis, then a questionnaire at the end and a conclusion. Tasks generally look a little bit like this. This is basically my script to introduce, myself to them and talk to them about what I'm doing. We're recording our conversation, managing expectations for them throughout the process. And then we start tasks. So in this case, this is I always like to start with a free exploration task. Just open the site, give them a little bit of background and let them explore, and then follow-up questions. I won't go through all, this is a very large test plan, so I won't go through all of it, but so here we're asking about the navigation. So we ask a very simple open question. I'd like to get your impressions on these menu items, and then let them talk. And then if we have to prompt them, we ask them specifically things about, what would you expect if you selected these? Would you expect to see, are these things you would expect to see if you're looking for inspiration? So we get very specific. After everything is done, I'll show you what a report looks like. Our reports tend to be very detailed. So here we review the methodology. So in this case, we did 12 sessions over 3 days. They were all conducted via Zoom. We talked a little bit about this already. We had 12 participants, landscape architects who have worked with landscape structures in the past, and 7 participated in the initial stakeholder interviews that we conducted. That's the interview that guy that I just showed you. Then these were the objectives that we laid out, and then we do a high-level summary of each objective. So in this case, is this proposed site structure intuitive and easy to use? We said in this case, somewhat. Respondents seem to understand the overall navigation, blah, blah, blah. You kind of get the idea. I won't read all of this to you. We go through that for all the objectives, and then we go page by or task by task. So here's the first task, which was what are your first impressions of the homepage? So this was a new design that they had actually done internally. And then we provide an observation. And then these are all quotes from the various respondents. So this was respondent number 7, number 8, number 3, et cetera. So they talk about, sometimes the quotes generally support the recommendations that we're making. Now we go through all of that for so this was how we evaluated the navigation. So here's, primary navigation, they understood what these were, but in this case, one of the things that surfaced is that no one, even people that had many years of experience with this company, had no idea what their products were. Nobody knows what Evos and Play Booster is. They just know they want a swing that's orange and super cool looking. So where do I get one of those? So thinking about, so the client was very product focused in terms of their business. So they were very internally facing in terms of the way that they were participating and understanding and thinking that everybody should know all of that. When in reality, people coming to their site had no idea what any of these things were. They were just looking for something that was very specific based on the attributes that they wanted in the product. We did a number of different variations of that, and we talk sometimes, 8 out of 12 preferred this version, that sort of thing. We go through that at the product level. You can see that there's just a lot of detail here. When we do a usability test, we really try to dig into as much as possible. Okay, so what I wanted to show you was, okay, so I'm going to show you 2 more documents, and then I will stop talking. Okay, so we had conducted interviews with patients, and unfortunately, I can't show you some of the patient interview stuff because they're patients and it's medical information, and we just can't do that. But I can explain a little bit about what we did. So we took them through. First thing that we did is we talked to patients, their caregivers, and to clinicians about this particular application. If you had an application like this, what would it be? What would you want it to be? How would it work? What value would it provide to you as a patient, and all the various roles? So what we did is we went through and we talked about, these are the types of information that they wanted, how they transitioned to managing their own care. So these are basically summaries of all of the things that we learned, how they would track symptoms, how they would access and who would have access to their information. So, you're a child going through this, your parents have access to all the information, then you turn 18 and they no longer have access. So what happens in that transition? So all that to say, what ended up happening here is there were a lot of different features that we were able to pull from this interview session. So we boiled it down to a handful of primary features. And I'm going to show you that right now. So this is what we're going to take the patients through tomorrow in basically like a focus group style setting. So we'll have 4 participants come into the Zoom. We're going to do 2 or I think maybe 3 sessions of 4. So we'll have 12 respondents total. And then what we're going to do is, so we'll have 4 in there at a time, and then we're going to take them through this process. So we'll talk to them a little bit about, I'm going to share this. We'll talk to them a little bit about why we're here. So this is based on, On the features that were identified in our individual interviews, we're going to detail out what the app will include and work together to generate ideas about how the app can provide or can work to provide survivors with the most value. So that's basically what we're setting the stage for tomorrow with. This is our goal for this session. Well, to have introductions and talk a little bit, get everybody comfortable, and talk a little bit about the process. They're all very well connected to this one particular doctor, so we'll talk about him a little bit as well. And then we boiled it down into these various features. So view treatment summary, so those details can be shared with other healthcare providers. That's one of the biggest ones. So you have a treatment at 3-4 years old, and now you're 18. And that treatment at 3 or 4 years old could actually surface symptoms for you when you're later in life. So physicians oftentimes want to know that somebody's had a particular treatment, so then they can understand what's going on better with that patient. Risks to be aware of, preventive measures, connection to and communication with others online, contacting their doctor, new information or research, appointment reminders, granting access to a parent or caregiver, and then transition plan as for survivors. So then what we're going to do is we put all of those onto a poll. So we're going to ask them then to basically tell us which are your top 3. And then what we do is we have all of these. So we're saying if the app can't launch, and then we're going to have a discussion about if the app can't launch with all the features that we discussed, which features would be included, which would have the most value to you. So we're going to actually open the floor to them to add more to the list is what's going to happen. I literally have just been putting these documents together, so they're not as baked into my brain as they normally would be. But so we'll do that. And then what we'll do is we're going to go through these things one by one. So we have all of the features that we listed, and what we're going to do is reorder this deck on the fly and go. And if they say, treatment summary, whatever are the top ones, we're going to focus on those top 3 first, and then we'll look at the rest of them. So the idea is that we're going to have these discussions around these topics. So we'll show them this. So we'll set this scenario. Imagine that you're seeing a doctor or a new doctor, and you need to share information about the treatment that you had. So creating, rather than saying treatment plan or treatment summary, give them a real situation that they would actually be in. This is something that you're going to do. So then we start with the first question. So and let the group kind of talk about that. So where would you expect to find this information in the app? And so we'll have a discussion around that. So then we'll reveal one of these questions, each one of these questions at a time. How do you need to be able to share this information with others? So then we'll have a whole conversation about sharing. And then what we're going to do on the fly is create some polls around sub-functionality that would come into play as the person is talking. So if somebody starts surfacing things, well, it'd be really great if it could do A, B, C, and D. Then Rebecca, my partner in this, she's going to be taking those and building, as I'm facilitating, she's going to be building secondary polls on the fly. So then what we can do is right after this, we can poll them and then have them tell us, have them further prioritize the things that are most important to them. Or we're also going to have them prioritize things that are the least important. So we go through that for each one of these, what does the clinic or doctor need from you? How much information do you need to provide? And then we move on to a new topic. So these sessions are going to be they're going to be 90 minutes. We'll have 4 participants. I will be facilitating, and Rebecca, instead of being kind of behind the scenes only taking notes, she will actually participate in the conversation. So it's going to be much more of like a focus group style setup using Zoom. Should be fascinating. We haven't done it yet, and so we'll see how it goes. And I'm sure we'll make changes to the process as we go. But this was the project that we had initially specified, or we were going to do some co-creation work around. And then as we started to get into it, as we started to talk to some of the patients who, some of them have medical problems that would prevent them from sketching, we felt that it was a much better experience for them and that we would gain a lot more information for our clients as well. And this is, the rest of this deck is just a number of these different questions. All right, so I'm going to stop sharing now.
Well, thank you, John, for a fantastic presentation. You went certainly a lot longer than you anticipated.
How long did I go?
It's 8:11, but we do have about 20 minutes to take questions.
Okay, so I didn't go over time.
No, it's very flexible. I was just saying that there was a lot of information, so thank you. And Nelo-san, welcome. See that you join us. Kirsten, do you have any questions?
Not off the top of my head. It was really fascinating to see those deliverables. That was really cool. So thanks for showing those.
Yeah, I always think it's good to provide some context about what we do. You know, just I think our approach tends to be a little bit more detailed than others, but that's what we focus on. So.
Yeah, no, I think those are great. I guess I do have one question. I know we're all living the Zoom lifestyle, and I'm on random Zooms at 7 p.m. and so is everybody else. But how do you approach work-life balance in the new way you're doing stuff at Crux?
Well, I would say that, you know, I don't work a 9-to-5 job.
Yeah, me either.
Even though, you know, technically, you know, we're we still do business during business hours. But what I do is I just have completely shifted my schedule around. So, you know, I have a little bit more time in the morning, you know, so I just kind of work the day a little bit differently. And I have a very, I have to get out of this little space. So I just tend to just stop and at a certain time. And what I've really been trying to do is, as much as I can, focus on not working on the weekends, and, you know, trying to get outside and walk around, you know, all of that sort of stuff. It is fatiguing to be on these calls.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's been a challenge for basically everyone, but everyone who does this kind of work and teaching too, right? It's just sort of when you can do it.
Yeah, I can't imagine teaching this way. So hands off to both of you for you know, doing that. It's pretty remarkable.
Well, what we're doing at Minneapolis College is my department is the graphic design, web design department, and we're doing all asynchronous online. So there are no required Zoom class times. We are running a lot of guest speakers, like Xuan is doing too, but we tend to just not have very much attendance at those, which is unfortunate, because I want to see everybody. I want to see the students. I want to see my classmates and stuff like that. But when it's not required, then people find other things to do.
Yeah. My son has one asynchronous day on Wednesdays, and so you know, what was he's 16, so he's not in school. He's sledding or doing something with his friends, you know.
Yeah.
So
are you Xuan, are you doing and I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly.
Oh, very good.
Okay. What are you doing many
wrong?
are you doing any synchronous lectures with Metro State?
Well, last year I started doing some sort of synchronous meetings, you know, every couple of weeks, just students' questions, have everybody come together, and I started doing the final presentations synchronously, so that people really get to get to see each other, you know. And
Yeah.
I discovered that when you're on Zoom, people are more likely to forget meetings
Mhm.
because they get distracted by some stuff in the kitchen or kids or pets. And when you record things, they just don't show up. They know that they can watch it later. It's almost like it has become all Netflix. And
Mhm.
you can watch it anytime, and it really kind of, it creates even bigger social distance.
Mhm.
That people are never really all together. And
Yeah. Yeah, that's been that's been a little tough. I mean, because we do try to encourage people to get together at a certain time, because we do want to collaborate and see everyone, but being as they can pass the class without coming, they don't come.
Oh,
So,
they'll email, like, even meetings at my university is like, oh, is this workshop going to be recorded?
uh-huh.
I mean, there's something good about being flexible, you know, it's all dispersed, you know.
Yeah.
But it's hard to sort of congregate.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
think deep into the pandemic at this point, that it just feels like, you know, things have become very much minimalized.
Hmm.
I do have a question. John mentioned, you know, no physical space, and then having some difficulty with, you know, co-creating or sketching, designing.
Hmm.
What do you, after all this, what do you think would be the ideal way where you can use the technology and not really suffer from it?
Oh, well, I think that there's just certain, like you said, congregating. You can't have people together. So I think that there's, like I said, I think there's some things that just will not work that way. I haven't figured out the magic bullet for doing co-creation
Hmm.
that way, unless there's some sort of, because the beauty of the process that we used is that it unifies everyone's drawing ability, right?
Hmm.
Because that was always the big thing. It's like, well, people would say, oh, I can't
I
draw, so
can't
I
draw.
can't participate. It's not about being able to draw, it's about being able to communicate your ideas. So
Well,
go ahead.
yeah, we actually did this at Clockwork for a couple projects that I was on, and I know it was inspired by Crux Collaborative. I don't remember who it was who brought it to us, but we had the gray markers, and we had the black Sharpies, small and big, and we had the yellow, and we we went through that process, I think probably pretty faithfully to how you guys did it. And I was really excited to do this with my students, and I bought a whole bunch of markers and stuff, and then COVID happened.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know that it would be the same if it was a digital thing, like.
Yeah, I know. I don't think it would be the same.
It's just like there's something about pen and paper in that environment that works so well.
Mhm.
And we actually simplified the process to be just 2 markers at one point.
Mhm. Cool.
So, but anyway, I don't know if I answered your question. Did I?
Oh, yes, in my question, yeah.
Okay. And I
Do
apologize.
you think?
I just wanted to apologize. I've been saying your name wrong all of this time, and I didn't know. So I'm sorry about that.
Oh, that's accepted. That's not necessary. It's Chuan.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we've got a few different difficult names here on the screen. Probably.
Well, all except for one. Mine's pretty easy.
Yeah, John, you can't really mess that up, right? What do you imagine, like, going forward in the when we are out of the pandemic, however that happens? Will you go back to sort of a hybrid, or will you go back to full usability lab, or will you just get together for the stuff that makes sense to get together for, like those sketching sessions?
Well, I think one of the things that the pandemic did for us is it created more products for us to offer to our clients. So if we want to do lean, user research, basically doing it the way that we're doing it right now is that's awesome. If
Mhm.
we have a client that really wants to do something formal, and we get that from time to time where, they want to bring in 25 or 24 respondents over 3 days, and we're going to go
Mhm.
through this whole process, and they want to bring in a bunch of different, then we would do a formal usability test. We'd rent a facility to do that. And co-creation, I actually prefer to do it at the client's office if we can. What I like to do is have them set up a war room there for us.
Mhm.
And what we do is we'll do it over two days, right? So we'll do one day with the group, do the collaboration, and everybody gets comfortable, because it basically then you're first round is sort of a throwaway anyway, because everybody's kind of getting used to,
Mhm.
are you maybe going to laugh at my sketches, type of anxiety. So what we'll do is we'll do a day of that. So probably like a 4 to 6 hour session with them. Then what I say to them is, okay, let's have a room where we can leave this stuff up. We're going to go away for 2 days. And what you're going to do, client, is you're going to show this to people in your organization and walk
Cool.
them through it. Take them through the process. See, and then we leave them with a whole bunch of Post-it notes. And anything that people say, just put a Post-it note there with a note for what feedback they have. If they have something that's some sort of good idea. So then what we do is we come back then for the second round. They take us through all of the stuff that, hey, Bob
Mhm.
from accounting came in here and he doesn't really know anything about this, but he had this great idea. That's the kind of stuff
Mhm.
that I love to find in those sorts of things.
Oh, that's a fantastic idea. I'm sure that really gets buy-in, like helps the rest of the company buy into whatever the process is you're trying to change.
Absolutely, especially if you have a marketing and technical team that are at, they're sort of
Mhm. Mhm.
together. That's it's a great opportunity for that, because they can come in there, they can show them, they can, have this whole discussion. And then sometimes we'll see a new person the next sketching session that says, hey, this person really wanted to talk to you about this. So it really enrolls everybody in that process, and then we can vet that stuff very quickly. We did one session in our office where we had the technical team actually stayed in a conference room, and they just kind of worked in there for the day. And the client subject matter expert people were conducting the session with. And what we would do is bring the technical people in and vet the ideas right there to see if they would work. And it was just,
That's efficient.
got us there so fast. Yeah. So.
Well, I have another question, John. So in terms of the online tools, what kinds of features or functions would you like to see that are not currently there?
In Zoom, or in the meeting stuff,
Or collaboration tools? Yeah.
well, I think it'd be really great if people could have some sort of a notepad to write down ideas or share things very, very rapidly. Rather, it's a little awkward to do that. I would also love it if Zoom was a little bit easier for me to just jump around between things to show. So you could, I don't like showing my whole desktop because there's a whole bunch of stuff there. But if you could just kind of click between applications, so that way you're not stopping or share, kind of what I had to do earlier today. I would also love it if it showed the person's camera while it was in mobile view, because that would be really great if we could get that too. So that kind of stuff would be awesome. And then the polling functionality is pretty great, but it's pretty rudimentary. You actually have to build each poll specific to the call. So it'd be great to be able to queue some up, or to be able to have like a post questionnaire that had more general questions and that sort of thing that we could ask people. that would be really nice to be able to do. And it would also be nice to be able to do rankings in there, 1 to 5, that type of thing versus just, on or off. So if I had a wish list, that's my short wish list right now. But.
Would you, you mentioned mobile. Would you prefer to do these kinds of studies on mobile in some circumstances?
In some circumstances, yes, especially when we have to talk to people that aren't in Minneapolis. That's one of the fantastic things about Zoom is that we can talk to people, and they can be anywhere. They don't have to come here, they don't have to be in person, that sort of thing. So for mobile or that sort of testing, it is really great to be able to see the screen in such detail. And that's one of the things that our device, it did an okay job of it, with the cameras pointing on it and stuff like that. But it wasn't like, as clear as what Zoom does.
Great, thanks. Any other questions, Kirsten and Nalan-san? Well, I don't have any further questions.
Okay.
John, can I ask students to email you for those who view the videos if they have
Of
questions?
course. Yeah, of course. And I'm happy anytime to chat or answer questions. I love talking to students. So anytime. So if you need a speaker need anybody to talk about interactive.
Yes, I might talk to you about fall semester for sure.
Yeah.
I teach, I developed a UX course and taught it for the first time last fall. And we hadn't had one before that. So learned a lot, got really good student response. And yeah, I'd love to do something like this for our class sometime between August and December.
Yeah, happy to participate.
That'd be fantastic.
But yes, yeah, feel free to forward my email address to anyone that has a question, or I'm happy to. It may take me a little bit of time to respond. I would just ask that they identify as, I saw this here, just so I know who they are, because I get a lot of weird emails. We all get a lot of weird emails, probably.
And I should just to briefly mention that we usually pay our speakers, but John has graciously turned down that payment and as a donation to the program, to the university. So thank you for that. And with that, have a great night. Again, thank you for a fantastic talk, and we'll see you around.
Okay, excellent.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.